Maine, a place known for its many lakes, streams, and ponds, its long list of beautiful wildlife, and miles of back road through dense forest without a block of civilization around. Join me as I show you what this great state has to offer. From foraging to fishing and wildlife conservation, we'll do it all. I live my life loving everything nature has to provide here. Stick around, and maybe you'll learn a thing or two. At the very least, I hope you enjoy following along. Welcome to Wild Maine. Hey guys, in this episode of Wild Maine, we're going to take a look at tanning hides. So I got this beaver hide here in front of me. It's a smaller one. It's got a little bit of a hole over here on one of the sides. As you can see, I kind of got it a little bit salted. I started a little bit before I decided, hey, I should probably make a video of this. So, if you guys watched my last video, then you would have seen that I caught a muskrat. And I tanned that on up. We'll use it for something in the future. So I cut it up the side after I tanned it. That way I have the solid chunk of the fur there on the stomach. And then the back is completely solid as well. But that turned out real nice. Nice, soft, supple leather. Took a few days. Obviously, where it's a small critter, it's not going to be, too difficult. Good place to start if you're a beginner. Start on something small. It's got real thin skin, so it's not too difficult. Anyway, we're going to move on to a beaver here. They're a little bit more difficult. It's got thicker skin. They have a lot more grease, so you have to focus more on washing them later on in the process. And it's quite a large piece of fur. So to tan a hide, you're going to need a few things. The first thing, obviously, is you're going to need a hide. The next thing you're going to need is salt. How much salt you need, obviously, is going to depend on the size of your fur. This one here took maybe a quarter pound. I'm not quite done yet, so I'm going to put a little bit on there. But it's going to need about a quarter pound. The muskrat took just a couple scoops. But you do have to salt it twice to make sure you have enough. If you get yourself a full box of salt, you're probably going to be alright. Next thing you're going to need, rubber gloves. Why? Well, because you always want rubber gloves when you're dealing with wild animals. Then you want your hide tanning formula. In this video, I'm going to use the orange bottle. If you're not familiar with it, it's very popular. It's got instructions right on the back, so it's not bad at all. You can also use the egg yolk method. You can use brain tanning. You can use the alum method. There's all kinds of things out there. Do plenty of research. Figure out what method works best for you. But in this one, we're gonna look at the orange bottle. You're also gonna want a very sharp knife. So I'm gonna use this beaver knife because, well, beaver knives, if you keep them upright, very sharp. For a hide this size, probably going on a 5-gallon bucket. For smaller hides like the muskrat one, something this size works perfectly fine. You're also going to want some dish soap. Dawn works very well. Off brands, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's just going to be all about degreasing the hide later on in the process. So now let's take a look at actually tanning the hide. So the first step is we're going to get the hide laid out good and flat. Get some rubber gloves on. And you want to get a good amount of salt on your hide. So what you're going to do is you're going to take this salt that's on there and you're going to massage it into the fur, well, into the skin, sorry. Get it all worked in there good. You're going to get it in every little crevice that you can. Work it in around the ears and eyes and the nose. Missing some right there. You can see how much, I'm not sure if you can see it on camera actually, but there's quite a bit of liquid there that's already started building up from all the salt on the skin. Massage it in there. Use a good amount of pressure when doing this. Don't be scared. You're not going to hurt it. There's that hole that I was talking about. So you got the leg hole there. then a small hole towards the outside, but that's not going to matter too much. If I make a wall hanger out of this, then I'll just sew it up. If I'm going to make something else out of it, then it'll just get cut. Working it in good. Probably use a little extra salt. This salt's pretty old, so it kind of clumped up on me, but it's still fine. Work it in good. Okay, so hide's all salted, it's been massaged pretty good. You want to make sure that your leg holes are pulled completely through so that all the skin is on the same side. You don't want it on the other side of the pelt. So all leg holes are in, good. What you're going to do is you're going to fold the pelt over on itself. It's most symmetrical this way, so this is the way that I'm going to do it. Make sure that all of the skin is hidden by the fur. So you got it good and folded. Next thing you're going to do, I like to start with the nose side, is you're going to roll it up on itself. Like so. Then you're going to grab your 5-gallon bucket, stick your hide down in there, and you're going to let it sit for 24 hours. Keep it away from direct heat, but other than that, stick it aside in a room temperature room. Don't leave it outside where it'll freeze. And you're going to let that sit for 24 hours. Now this video, as you can see, is being done with a green hide. I pulled this one out of the freezer from last year, let it thaw overnight, took almost 24 hours. The fur is very insulating, so it's going to take a little while to get that to thaw out. But once it got thawed out, I then fleshed it out. Did that this morning, just before I made this video. So, if you're going to do it with a pelt that you put up for sale and decided you didn't want to sell it, or you just wanted to put it up and dry it, and you wanted to start it that way, not a problem at all. But you're going to need an additional step. Before you go to this salting step, you're going to need to rehydrate. So to do that, get a bucket, depending on the size of your pelt. Obviously, you're not going to put a beaver in a tiny little bowl. But you're going to want room temperature water. Cold will work, but it's going to take a little bit longer. Hot will cause slippage on the fur. So you don't want any of that. Just regular room temperature water. Fill up a bucket, and you're going to submerge your hide until it's good and flexible, just like it was before you dehydrated it and put it up. So just know, if you're going to be using a dry pelt, do that first. After 24 hours of letting the salt sit on the hide, you're going to take the hide, remove it from the bucket, and let it drain. As you can see, quite a bit of liquid came out of just the skin of that beaver. Squeeze out any remaining liquid. Don't twist or wring the hide. As you can see, there's quite a bit of liquid. Next, we're going to unroll the hide. You can see with all the folds of skin how much the hide has shrunk with just one night of sitting with salt on it. Next, we're going to scrape all the salt off the hide. This is where the sharp knife comes in handy. A good metal spoon works well too. You want to make sure that when you're scraping on good flat pelt.
If you go over a big wrinkle and you aren't careful, you can easily cut through the hide, and then you ruin all the work that you're going to be putting into this beautiful animal. Pull apart the skin to make sure that it lays flat. Get as much salt as you can off the hide. The spoon that I mentioned works exceptionally well for going around hard to reach areas such as around the face, the ears, and other tight spots. Don't be afraid to use too much salt. Now we're applying another liberal layer of salt over everything we just worked into the hide. We're going to fold it onto itself just like we did the last time that we salted it. And we're going to roll it and let it sit for 24 hours again. After letting the hide sit for another 24 hours, take it and dump as much salt off it as you can. This next part of the process is going to take quite a bit of time and a lot of elbow grease, so prepare yourself for that. Just like you did 24 hours before, you're going to take your nice sharp knife and you're going to scrape off all the salt that's on the hide. At this point, you should notice that the hide is much firmer than it was prior to salting it. Once you have all the salt scraped off the hide, I generally like to let the hide sit for another hour just as it is. While the hide is resting, we're going to take 2 gallons of warm water and we're going to put them into our 5-gallon bucket. In this step, we are making a pickle. The pickle requires half a pound of salt per 1 gallon of water. Where we have 2 gallons of water, we need to measure out 1 pound of salt. For making my pickle, I like to use canning and pickling salt. Kinda makes sense, doesn't it? Pickling salt for making a pickle. Combine the salt and warm water. Stir well until the salt is dissolved in the water. What I'm doing now is I'm using my knife to thin the hide before I do the next step of the process. As with prior steps, you want to make sure that you're only scraping on flat skin. Avoid scraping over any wrinkles or bumps. Thickest parts of a beaver hide run down its back, from the back side of its neck all the way down to its tail. That's where we put most of our focus. You're going to want to thin these parts quite a bit, as the hide here is very thick on a beaver. To give you an idea, I spent over an hour thinning the hide on this beaver, and in the end, it still wasn't quite enough. Make sure not to work on one spot too long. Keep working your way around the pelt. You can see how the hide is starting to get a suede-like texture to it. Here I'm using sandpaper on the thinner edges just to rough up the surface a bit. This will help the tanning agent soak into the hide a little bit better as it opens up the pores. Next, you're going to fold the pelt hair side in so that all of the skin is showing. Once the salt in the water has cooled down, it's time to place the hide into the solution. Make sure to squeeze out as many air bubbles as you can, and make sure that the skin side is showing as much as possible. Make sure to fully submerge the pelt. According to the instructions on the orange bottle, the hide is going to stay in the pickle for 6 to 8 hours. I chose 8 hours where this is a thicker hide. While the hide is in the pickle, make sure to stir often. This allows the solution to come in contact with the skin as much as possible. I made sure to stir it at least once an hour. After the hide is sat in the pickle for 6 to 8 hours, it's time to drain and squeeze out the hide. It's important that when you squeeze out the hide, you don't really wring it out. This means that you're not using any aggressive twisting motions. Just use your hands to squeeze it out and get as much water as you can out of the hide. Work from the top down for the best results. You are then going to use cold water to rinse the hide and then squeeze it dry once again. Now it's time to wash the pelt. Using warm water and dish soap, you're going to get a good subsea bath for the pelt to go into. Use your hands to scrub pretty thoroughly without being overly aggressive on the fur. Once you have washed the pelt well, you're going to squeeze it and set it aside. Once again, do not twist and wring it, simply squeeze. Now rinse the pelt well again, and then wash in dish soap once again. Squeeze out the water well once again, and then rinse thoroughly under cold water one more time. Rinse very well until the water runs clear off the pelt. Make sure that no bubbles are coming out of the hair. Squeeze as much water as you possibly can out of the fur, again without wringing it. It's important to get as much moisture out of the pelt as you can at this point before you get the tanning solution onto the hide. Now, you're going to warm up your tanning solution. To do this, you're going to turn on some hot water, fill up a bowl, and place the orange bottle in the water. Let the bottle soak in the hot water for half an hour. While waiting for the tanning solution to warm, it's not a bad idea to dry out the hair a little bit more. Use a paper towel to remove excess moisture from the skin side as well. Now it's time to bust out the tanning solution. You're definitely going to want gloves for this part. Time for the fun part. Pour on a little bit of tanning solution at a time and work it in really well with your fingers. Massage it in good and then add a bit more. Make sure to get the solution into all nooks, crannies, and crevices. Make sure you try not to get any tanning solution onto the hair side of the pelt. A beaver will use roughly half a bottle of tanning solution. Once you have the tanning solution completely worked into the hide, it's time to fold the skin side onto the skin side so that no skin is open to air. You're going to let the hide sit with the skin side in for 12 to 16 hours according to the bottle. Again, with this being a thicker hide, I went with a longer time and I let it sit for 16 hours. You don't want the skin to be exposed to air at all. I put the paper towels underneath the hide to wick away any excess moisture I could. After 16 hours of letting the hide sit and letting the tanning solution work its magic, it's time to open it up. You can see how the hair dried pretty well. At this point, we're going to let the hide sit opened up and let the air dry it out a little bit. This part of the process can take anywhere between 16 hours and 3 days. This is what the beaver looks like after letting it sit to dry overnight.
Okay, so the hide's been sitting in this position for about 16 hours now. It's not really wet. It's a little bit tacky in areas, but it's drying out pretty good. And one thing that I like to do when I'm tanning hides is I like to make sure that I start working them early. The earlier you start working the hide and breaking it, as soon as it starts drying, the softer you're going to have of a product in the end. The more you work it, the easier it is to work it through the whole process instead of letting it dry completely and then trying to break it then. So what you're going to do is you're just going to grab tufts of skin and you're going to start pulling. So it's still pretty wet. I'm not sure if you can see it though, but I got white spots forming when I stretch. And that's what you want. You really want it to get good and white. Now this is still very wet, so I'm not going to have a lot of progress yet. But like I said, I like to start working the hide early. See right there, got a good bit of white. And I'm not going to go crazy, you know, work your way around. Don't focus too much on one area. You can do that as it starts to dry. You know, everything's going to dry a little bit different. It's not going to dry completely evenly, so as parts start to dry, focus on those areas. But right now, I'm just going to work my way around, and you're stretching the hide. Pulling all different directions. And what you're doing is you're breaking up those fibers in there. You're going to get it good and soft as it dries. Now with the beaver, your edges definitely are going to dry a lot quicker than the center. And that's because the skin's a little bit thinner. And depending on how well you thinned out the stretch down the back will determine how much quicker the outsides are going to dry than the center. If you thinned it real good, then it should all dry kind of at the same time, but more often than not, you're going to find the outsides dry a lot quicker. So we got a little bit there, a little bit of white patches. We're going to let that set. And we're going to come back to it, you know, every hour or so. If you want, you can put a fan on it, get the process really, you know, sped up. It all depends on how much time you have to work with. I got all the time in the world, so I'm just going to, you know, let it sit here, let it do its thing, come back, you know, every once in a while, pull a bit, go back to do my other daily activities, and you know, just work it. Probably going to take me a good 24 hours to get this hide broken, if not more. Smaller animals, it's going to take you a few hours. Larger animals with thicker skin, it's going to take you a lot longer. So we'll let it sit, and we'll come back in a bit.
You can see here how the white patches are really starting to form as I pull and stretch the hide. As the pelt has dried more, you can see it really starts to break a bit more. You can see here how you have to pull in multiple different directions to break the hide. Here I'm using the knife to further break the hide and to also rough it up a bit, giving it a good suede feeling. It may not look like it, but I'm actually using a good amount of pressure.
So after days of hard work, we finally had a tan beaver pelt. If I could do it a little bit differently, I'd go back and I'd thin it more. You can also thin it in this state here. The bottle of the hide tanning formula says you can use a wheel, you can use a knife. So I'm probably gonna trim it up a bit and use a wire wheel to get it a little bit thinner for me. Everything depends on what you want to use the hide for. Me personally, I'm going to use this hide for a project that I have in mind, so I'm going to end up cutting a slit through the arms towards the outer side of the pelt. I'll thin and cut as needed. I'm going to have no use for the face, so I'll probably save that and use it for something else. Remember, always use as much of the animal as you can. As you see from that last step of the process, when we used the knife to scrape the tanned hide, we got a good suede feel here. With the hide, you have two sides, just like with any leather you're going to get at the store. You're going to have the suede side and then the leather side. The suede side is the side that's on the inside where the guts are. We got a real soft suede feel here now. If you had no fur on the other side, that's where you're going to have a nice, flat, almost glossy, leather-like appearance. But we did this tan with hair on. If you wanted to do it the other way, you have a couple more steps to get the hair off. But this is what we're ending with a process with. Hope you liked this video. If you did, please like, subscribe, share with your friends. Thank you.